Hello everyone, welcome to another GT3 track guide for iRacing. This time we're at Imola, and like usual, I will show the Hotlap first, and then we'll get into the track guide. So for turn 1, you want to align yourself to the right side, and I'm using the entrance road on the right hand side as my reference for braking. So as my car gets aligned with it, I begin lifting and braking. So I'm shifting down to third gear, and the goal here for the chicane is you want to cut all of this red and white curb, getting as close as you can to this black anti-cut. However, you don't want to touch this anti-cut, as this one's very deadly and will send your car flying. So you also want to make sure that you're not overcooking your entry here. Otherwise, you're just really going to compromise the rest of the segment here, and it'll be pretty hard to keep it flat out in the upcoming corners. Once again, cutting the red and white curb on this part of the chicane as well. And I am doing a slight lift here, just to ensure that I'm not running too far out to the left. Yeah, you really don't want to end up like close to the grass here, because you're going to really compromise your entry into the next corner, which is a very important one because it leads to a long straight. And it's very easy to just understeer wide and scrub speed. So you want to make sure that you're not pushing too far out here on this part of the corner. Can easily cut over this anti-cut, no issue. For here, for the exit, you want to make sure that you're keeping the left sides on the red and white curb. It's a pretty sensitive track limit, as it's pretty much sensitive everywhere, so just keep that in mind. So for the second chicane, I'm using the 50 board, lifting and braking just before it. And it's kind of a reoccurring theme at Imola, is for all these chicanes, is you don't want to carry way too much speed into the first part, because you'll easily compromise the second part, which is the important part of the chicane, once again leading to a long straight. So kind of a similar approach here. However, you don't want to cut the first anti-cut here. That one you want to avoid, but the second one you can easily cut over, as it doesn't unsettle the car too much. I'm downshifting to fourth gear before the first part of the chicane. And then once the car resettles and lands, I begin braking again, not very hard, and then I'm shifting down to third gear. Super important to utilize all this curb here. You don't want to mash the throttle on the exit here, because if you do, it's very easy to run wide. The exit's a lot narrower than you think, and not to mention that it also has a very sensitive track limit. So you want to try to keep the right side tires completely on this red and white curb, as it can be very easy to pick up an off track here. So for the hairpin, I begin braking at the end of this entrance road on the right hand side, utilizing all the track to the right, even past this white line, getting as close to the grass as possible. You want to turn in quite late. Super important that you delay your second downshift. So pretty much right as I'm apexing here, that's when I downshift to second gear. And I'm slowly ramping the throttle back up. Once again, trying to keep the left side tires on this red and white curb. For this left-hander, the 50 board is my reference for braking, and I'm only downshifting to fourth gear. Not braking too hard initially. You want to get as close to the red and white curb here for your apex, and you kind of want to follow the white line on the inside. And for the exit, another sensitive track limit here, so make sure you're keeping the left side tires on this curbing. Immediately bringing the car to the left to travel a shorter distance to the next corner. This is a pretty tricky segment here. So I'm using this white paint on the green wall on the left, and that's my reference for lifting and braking. For the first part, I'm braking very lightly initially here for the first part of this sequence of corners. I'm also delaying my downshifts. I'm cutting a lot of this inside curb. And as the car kind of lands, I'm judging the distance to the curb on the left here. Then I brake harder for the second corner of this sequence. Once again, delaying the downshift a bit, going to third gear. It helps keep the rear stable, as the front end of the car is already really loaded going downhill here. So you want to make sure you're timing your downshifts. And you downshift too quickly, you can spin the car if you're not careful. And it's super important that you're utilizing all this curb to the left to open up this right-hander. Once again, avoiding the black anti-cuts, but exploiting all of this red and white curb on the inside. Keeping the right side tires on the red and white curb. Trying to get back to the track pretty quickly to avoid any slowdowns or off tracks here as well. For this chicane, I'm braking in between the 150 board, so roughly about 75, 80 is my reference. So I'm downshifting to third gear initially, cutting a lot of these curbs on this chicane, just ensuring I'm keeping the left side tires here on the red and white curb, and the right side tires on the red and white curb on the following segment. Also, important that you're downshifting to second gear when the car lands here, just to give you that little bit of extra rotation here, as the exit's very narrow at the end of this chicane. Once again, keeping the left side tires on the red and white curb. So for the final segment of this track, excuse me, I begin lifting and braking as soon as the car straightens up. You can also kind of use the 100 board to gauge your distance, but I found that just right as I'm able to straighten out the car, that's when I begin braking. It's very easy to overshoot this corner, as I do in this lap a little bit. I'll point that out as we get there, but I'm downshifting to third gear. I'm cutting all this inside curb all the way, using all the AstroTurf on the inside as well. So I cook the entry just a little bit here, use a bit more steering angle than I really should be. So it's important that you don't carry way too much speed in this corner, because you want to set yourself up nicely for the penultimate corner, where a lot of time can be gained or lost here. Keeping the left side tires on the red and white curb once again. You want to make sure that you're not touching this grass on the right hand side. You can get a very easy off track here. I'm keeping the car in third gear, and I'm just slightly dabbing on the brake, like no more than, like actually even less than 10%, I believe. Roughly before this change in the racing or the tarmac color. Once again, cutting all this curb on the inside, pushing the throttle quite early here to ensure you get a nice exit onto this really long straightaway. Same as before, keeping the you want to stay on this red and white curb. Just hugging the right side wall. And that's a track guide for Imola. I hope you guys found this video helpful. And with that, I'll see you next week.